How are we all doing? Third day of MadFest. We've all recovered here for the third day of it. So I'm going to talk to you guys for about 45 minutes. I've tried to intersperse it with some. I'm conscious it's the third day. I'm conscious you don't want to hear me talk for 45 minutes solidly. So I've interspersed it with a bit of content, a bit of video. Please think of any questions, anything you want to ask. Please do take the opportunity. I'm going to talk a little bit about two topics that are very close to my heart: personalization and innovation. So. The screen is enormous, so I look like it's a huge head on the screen. So I'm Ollie Shayer. I am the Omni-Media Director at Boots. So my role at Boots is I have two parts to my role. I look after all of media for Boots, so all of the media we buy ourselves. And I also look after Boots Media Group, which is our retail media group. So if you may have seen this week, I've talked a lot about Boots Media Group. We're not talking about that today. I'm actually going to talk more about Boots. And actually, I'm not going to talk as much about that. I'm actually going to talk about a bit more of my wider experience. So my background, as Tom says, we've known each other for quite a long time, a very long time, actually. Probably too long that we probably shouldn't admit. But I used to work at Nestle. I worked at Diageo, so I have FMCG background. And then I went abroad and worked in Amsterdam for Booking.com, which I'll talk a little bit about. And then I come 2 years ago to work at Boots. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how personalization works for Boots, but also more broadly. And then also I'm talking about innovation, which is a topic I really am passionate about. So, personalization, the power of personalization. So, I thought I'd start with a quote. Love a quote. A bit of Jeff Bezos to start with. So, Jeff Bezos says, personalization, when you go into a bar and sit down and the bartender puts a whiskey in front of you without you having to ask what you want. I think it's a really great analogy for what personalization is. It's really about that understanding of the customer and understanding what they want and being able to give that to them. And I'm going to talk in a minute why that's so critical now in the world that we're living in. But contrasting this with my own experience, so I come to London a lot. I'm based in Nottingham. I usually stay in the same hotel because we have a very stringent expense policy at Boots. And every time I go to the hotel, I go into the hotel and I go to the desk and the gentleman says, "Oh, hello, have you stayed here before?" And I think, wow, that's a really fantastic consumer experience for me. We don't have any form of loyalty program, and you've no idea who I am. So I get no personalized experience. So if I had choice, I probably wouldn't stay there. And if I contrast that with some of the other places that I've been, it's very different. But that experience that you have, that understanding of you as a human, and understanding of you as a customer, is really the absolute context of personalization. But you're thinking, that's great, Ollie, but why are you going to talk for 45 minutes about this? This is really critical. Well, actually, the really, really critical part is it really matters. This is some work by the McKinsey have just released, and this is all about why personalization really matters to businesses for the future. So, during the pandemic, 75% of customers tried a new shopping behavior during the pandemic. So something they've never done before. It's a whole range of customers that are out there trying brand new things that they never did before. And the two most critical factors are, if you look at the role that personalization makes in the decisioning of which brands they choose to work with, there's two key statistics. The first is 71% expect they don't even think it's necessary. They expect personalization as part of it, and 76% get frustrated if they don't find it. So it's now for customers is absolutely what they expect, but it's also something that frustrates them if it doesn't happen. And more critically, that's not just in general. So when you look at it through the purchase cycle, what you actually see is it affects all of the elements of the life cycle. So it affects when you purchase. So as I said, 76 find likely to consider purchasing from brands that will personalize. When you think about repurchasing, 78% are more likely to make repeat purchase from those who personalize, and even recommendations. So again, when you have that personalized experience, you're more likely to recommend it. And it's quite simple because it's more about who you are. It talks to you as an individual rather than talking more holistically. So it's a really critical part now for us as brands to understand that this is really what customers expect. And it's just some examples of some personalized stuff that we do at Boots. But if you look at it, the fastest growing S&P 500 companies drive 40% more of their revenue from personalization than slower growing companies. That's an incredible statistic. So it's a huge amount of increase in volume. So this is the expectation of the customer. I think it's been driven even more during the pandemic. And if you don't have it, it leads to a really disappointing experience. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my own experience that I've had. Is anyone here from Virgin Media? I should say that before I begin. No hands up? Brilliant. I shall continue. So I have Virgin Media at home. I'm sure, do other people have Virgin Media at home for Wi-Fi? The lady over there definitely does. So Virgin Media is a great service in Nottingham where I live. It's phenomenal. 1 gigabyte service. It's incredible service. I came to the end of my 18-month contract with Virgin, so I decided I was going to, go back, see what else I could do. So obviously I went on Martin Lewis and saw what options I had. And I rang up Virgin and I said, I'd love to extend my contract with you. And they said, yeah, that would be great, Mr. Shayer. We'd love you to extend our contract with you. So I said, oh, great, fantastic. So next week we're going to extend it for you. Okay, brilliant. You don't have to do anything. It's all sorted. It's brilliant. So there I go. I've extended my contract. I feel really great. They understand me. They value me as a customer. And then my Wi-Fi on the day that I was supposed to switch over just turns off. Turns off. No Wi-Fi. And I have the Exco call with the exec that day. So there's me with my hotspot. So I ring Virgin. I was like, well, they've turned off my Wi-Fi. What am I going to do? So they said, well, actually, don't worry, we'll fix it. It'll be absolutely fine. So it took them 5 days to fix it. So I didn't have any Wi-Fi in my home for 5 days. The reason why that frustrated me was because during that time, they also sent me a range of emails. The first email said, dear Mr. Shayer, we're moving your channels in the future for your Virgin TV. So I was like, okay, nothing about my Wi-Fi, but you're telling me about my TV. The second is they said, we've noticed that your Wi-Fi pod isn't working in your home. Yes, because I haven't got any Wi-Fi. And then thirdly, even better, after that, they sent me a feedback survey that said, we'd love you to tell us about the experience you've had with Virgin Media recently. Now, I could do this for any brand. I pick on Virgin Media only because of the experience that I had with them recently. But the reality is, this is an automated experience for customers that's taken place, that's driven by what has happened and is driven by technology and is not driven by the customer. Because actually, if you'd gone back to the beginning, you could have taken me out of all of this by just putting me in an exclusion group. So I wouldn't have received any emails. And so I think my key thing for this is, sorry, as I click forward, is we have to be customer-centric when we think about personalization. Personalization is absolutely about the customer at the heart. All right? It's about putting yourself in the customer's shoes. Now, I will not stand up here and say that Boots does it right every single time. I'm sure someone else on another stage could very easily, I'm sure, have put Boots examples up. But it's just that concept around really thinking about the customer and putting yourself in your shoes of them before you think about personalization. Personalization normally has been driven a lot by technology. And I think the key thing for us to think about is it's not just about the technology. Actually, it's about who the customer is and really thinking about who they are. What are the moments that matter to them? How are we going to connect those experiences together? And how do you provide that common language to them? And the reason why that's important, as I said, is because really customer experiences they are sometimes disconnected, and they represent what we do as organizations when we separate things out, when we separate email marketing away from digital or from media. And actually, we need to think much more holistically about how we see the customer, because they only see one experience. The experience I had with Virgin may have come from 3 different departments that all were trying to help me. But in reality, I only had one experience. So when we think about personalization, it's really about how does all of that come together really, really well and create a single-minded experience for the customer rather than somewhat fragmented. And I apologize to Virgin Media. They were very good. They fixed my Wi-Fi. It's brilliant now. So someone who does it really well. Has anyone been to Disneyland? Yes, hands up. Does anyone enjoy their time at Disneyland? Yes? I like Disney. I've been to Disneyland once, but I love Disney as a company. And the reason I love Disney as a company is I think they put the customer at the heart of everything they do. So recently I met someone who did a similar job to me for Disney. It was really interesting. We were talking about Disney cruises, and we were talking about the way in which they understand the customer's behavior and the signals that it gives them about the experience that they have. But they map the entire journey of the customer over their lifetime around their experiences, not just for what they do for cruises, but for parks, but for others. But also, what are the touch points within that experience that they might have that would improve that for them so that they have a more personalized experience when they go back. So here you see the example of the touch band. Did anyone do this when they were in Disneyland? The lady down here did. Did you enjoy it? Yeah? Even better. There we go. Fantastic. So I love this idea. So when you go to the park, you can go buy a wristband where you can connect to different experiences within the park that you go to. And then really interestingly, I don't know if you remember when you used to go, so when I was younger, I used to go to Alton Towers before I moved out of the UK. And I used to get taken a photograph on the ride, and you'd be like, they'd say at the end, would you like to buy it, sir? And you'd say, well, no, I don't want to pay £12 for it. But what's really interesting about this is when you tap this, it connects the photography of every experience that you have in the park that they might take for you. And then at the end of your experience, it then sends it to you after when you get home because you've registered your band. And it says, do you remember this amazing experience you had when you were with us? Here's all of these amazing moments that you had together. And do you want to relive that in another moment? So either come back next year or alternatively find an alternate moment that you might want to do it. It's just a really, really great way of combining technology with a really great customer experience. So I think, as a brand, I really like what they do, but I think it's that concept of customer centricity and really thinking about those moments and then adding technology on top of it. So I'll just pause for a moment and have a bit of water. So I wanted to just they asked me to put up some ideas about personalization and what I think about what would be the key thing for it. So the things for me that were really important when you think about personalization, this is a lot of what we think about at Boots, is about really starting with the first thing, which I've touched on, which is about audiences. Who are the audiences that you want to talk to? Who are the people that really matter and the ones that you want to talk to? Identifying who they are, who is the most important customers for you. The second point is collecting and analyzing the data about their behavior. At Boots, we have a lot of data. I'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute. But actually, there's so much data that's available now about understanding customers and their behavior and the triggers that come from that actually it's possible for you to find that even if you don't have significant amounts of first-party data, or you can partner with others to really understand that customer journey in those moments. The third is really understanding what those jobs to be done are for the segment. So when we think about jobs to be done, what is it by that different audiences that I want to tell them or get them to do as I move through that experience that I can set with them and build segments for it? And that the critical part is the fourth part, and I look at Tom for this because we've talked about this a lot. This is all about developing personalized content and offers. The one thing that you don't want to do is do all of the top three and then give the customer the same piece of content, which is regularly what can happen. So what you find is you do brilliant audience work, brilliant understanding of who the audience is, what is it you want to talk to them about, what's critical, what's the important part, and then give them the same offer or the same experience. Because again, you've done all the steps at the beginning, but without actually personalizing the experience, the offer that you want to give them. So just thinking about that as well as the content and creative element is really important. And then finally, the key part that we do a lot, and has been a big part of my career, and I'll talk a bit more about in a minute, is really about thinking about how we test and evaluate. Because if you do all of this, it should give you really, really rich learnings that then allow you to come back. And then the critical part at the end is then to automate it, so that it does it automatically. But again, it still puts the customer at the heart of what you want to do. All right. So that's a bit more general. Now I'll talk a little bit more about why does personalization matter for Boots? Why is it really important for us as a business? So personalization has a huge role to play at Boots. We are a company, it's a 175-year-old company, and we think of customers incredibly as the heart of our business. That was why Boots was set up. So the things that have really changed for Boots and why has personalization become such an important part of what we do has really been about a number of different factors. I'm sure you've heard an excessive amount of stuff about the deprecation of third-party cookies. I won't talk too much about that, but really being able to find our audiences in the future becomes more difficult. The second part is about obviously GDPR and what that does for first-party data. And then the third part for us is about technology has moved on enormously. So, you weren't able previously to connect your first-party data with media audiences and then be able to activate it. Over the course of the last 2 years, that's accelerated massively. That's hugely accelerated, and you can now do that in some really interesting ways, which I'll touch on a little bit in a minute. It's also really been critical for us that what we're now able to do is connect that first-party data to our activity on and offline. So we can understand the effect of showing a customer an ad in an environment and then being able to measure the effect, whether that's in the store environment or whether that's online. And also understanding the effect of what offline advertising has on online shopping and what online advertising has on in-store shopping. And then finally, the critical part, the volume of addressable channels is only growing. So Boots as a retailer uses all media channels, but what you find increasingly, and we see it in the world of CTV, broadcast VOD and other areas, the growth of addressability and the connectivity that the technology that has been arrived for first party really allows us now to connect a lot more to addressable channels and to reach customers in that way. The other big change obviously is customer behavior. So customer behavior is fundamentally changing. People are watching less linear, right? Linear still has a massive role to play for us as a business. It's a huge part of our remit, and much, much more sporadically when they want to. And that, again, opens up more ability for us to open more addressability. And media owners also are recognizing that and utilizing their own first party to match with our first party with that. So I touched on this. Boots has got a huge relationship with customer. 1849, next year is 175 years for us as a business. We're one of the most trusted brands. We take what we do with data very, very seriously because customers are the heart of our business. But we know loads about customers. So we know who they are, we know how they live, we know what they buy, and we know that at an individual level. And we know that for their behavior over the course of a considerable period of time. So when we work with suppliers and they want to understand, okay, I want to launch a new MPD, I want to launch a fragrance for MPD in a period of time, what we're able to tell them is, for the last 10 years, this is how all of our customers have behaved against that. How do you build then the audiences from that, and then how are you able to therefore target them? And so the richness of that data is incredibly valuable. So what that does allow us to do is to build and understand that purchase behavior, and this is the cycle that we go through. We build and understand the customer's purchase behaviors and what they've done before. We use that first party for really strong insight planning. Secondly, we define the audiences we want to talk to, so going back to what I was touching on earlier, really understanding, okay, based on what we want to deliver, who are the audiences we want to talk to. We select the right channels based on the connectivity of those audiences, but equally also based on the insight. So it could be that those customers are not online shoppers. We cannot be found online, but actually the data we have here lets us understand their geolocation. It lets us understand their shopping behavior. It lets us understand other things that they might be connected to that we can reach them with new channels on. So it's not only an activation from a first-party perspective, it's also the planning of media. And then finally, it lets us basically build all of our measurement. So we correlate, from an online perspective, the effectiveness of our digital advertising through that. So that's how we think about kind of building personalization from insight through to audience, through to activation, through to measurement. And this is how we do it from a first-party data perspective. So we start with permission data. This is really, really important for us. We have consented data. We connect it surely to the clean room, so we work with partners like LiveRamp and InfoSum. We then have 200-plus always-on segments that are available for customers for us to utilize with over 20 media partners that we've now connected to. So we have our first-party data connected into pretty much all of the major advertisers that we work with, and that's been a big part of our journey over the last 2 years, and we have a lot more to come in that area. And that covers all media owners, everything from traditional media to social media to digital out-of-home to many of others. So it's this is now implementing the technology to enable us to do all of the planning that we had on the previous slide. So you think it's great, Ollie? That sounds absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for that wonderful talk you've just given us. Does it do anything, right? So I'll put this up. I'm allowed to show this because it's been signed off. This shows us the incremental return on investment. So right in the top right-hand corner, this is just a revamp of what I just touched on, which is how we build our data into the safe haven and then over into many different partners. It delivers on average an ROI of 2 for every pound that we spend on media, which is an incredible performance for us. 60% of our media is now first-party data-driven. And as I said, 200 segments are always on. So it really works for Boots. It's an incredibly powerful tool for us. I'm going to take a pause for a second just to have some more water. So one other thing I want to touch on from personalization. So as I said, it's a really powerful tool for us. One of the bigger things I want to talk about now is about A/B testing. When I was at Booking.com, I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute, but when I was at Booking.com, they always said the highest form of understanding of whether or not a customer does something is behavioral. So do they react in a certain way to something they show you? So when I used to go and see my bosses, they used to say to me, that's great, Ollie, but what's the actual behavioral effect? Because that's what they class as the highest effect for customer really understanding. So this is an example of something we ran earlier last year. So this is a very attractive looking DPA activity for Meta. And we A/B tested about 150 different variants of our DPA to try and find different ways into which we can improve the performance. So, because we saw that it wasn't performing as much as we wanted to. And so what we did is we basically took different ways into which we can put different frames, different elements, reviews, pricing, logos, whatever it was, all of the different elements of it, to pull it apart, to then be able to understand the effectiveness. And what we did this over a range of length of time. So did it over a sort of 4-week period. And what we were able to do is to increase the performance by about 45%. Now, the principle of A/B testing is really at the heart of personalization, which is really that understanding of not only what just starting and being able to affect the customer behavior, but consistently wanting to build on it. And how we look at it is breaking down each of the different component parts of the ad and being able to then change those and alter those. And I'm sure Tom will talk you some more about that as well, because I know he's quite passionate about this topic. All right. So I'm just checking I'm doing for time. So no presentation would be complete this year without ChatGPT. I didn't do it in any of my other presentations this week, so I thought I'm going to have to get it in, right? Anyone in here use ChatGPT? So I thought that would be the case, yes. So I won't go through how massive the growth it's seen hugely. I don't think it's just ChatGPT, it's just generative AI as a whole. This is a really great slide. I love search data. So this is the data from search. You see AI over time, and then you see the spike that comes in when ChatGPT arrives. It's massive. The reason why it is because it's a better user interface, I think. It gives people the ability to use it. And if you haven't used it, go and use it for anything. You know, if next week you've got to go and write a presentation, use it to see how it creates it. I think it's the usability of it that's getting really interesting. We're doing some really interesting stuff. Holly was here earlier, Holly McClellan, who runs our CRM for Boots. She's doing some incredibly interesting stuff with A/B testing with generative AI to generate all of the advertising within that. And we're seeing incredible results and incredible speed. So I thought yesterday I talked about retail media. Today I will touch very quickly on generative AI. It's got a huge part to play in the future of media. I talk very specifically about how I think it's going to work in personalization going forward. So how I see it going forward, and this is a very media-centric thought, is at the moment, if you go to a partner like Meta, what you do is you put your data into there, you put creative in, and you let the buying algo make decisions for you about who the audience is and the targeting based on the data that it has for it. In the future, this is why this has got very big. This is enormous on the screen. The buying algo will be the key part of the driver for the decisioning of who gets your advertising. It will drive it. And if you look at things like Performance Max, which is the new release from Google that they're utilizing, it's becoming a little bit more black box. It's becoming a little bit more that you can't see inside it. But actually, the things that become even more important because of that are data and creativity. So it's how you feed it and the creative that you put into it becomes even more important. Because actually, the AI side of it, you will have less control over. You will have less ability to affect. But these two elements here become incredibly critical. And if you don't work very hard on the data that feeds into this to make this work harder, and you don't work as hard on the creativity, these two are the elements that you will be able to affect more in the future, I believe. And so therefore, as a team and as a business, we'll focus really heavily here because this is an element we'll maybe have less control over. And the 15 to 5 is the evolution, I think, in the growth of how teams will operate. When I launched Booking.com's in-house team, we needed 15 people to do the job that 5 people can do today because of the way in which AI has taken over. It's always been present in buying, particularly for media, but it's evolved massively. And if you look at the way in which large-scale media owners are going, it's only going to accelerate. So the other part of it is what is the roles that you need that will be different today and tomorrow that will allow you to do what you want to do, bearing in mind the focus will be here, maybe more than where we've spent a lot of our time as media people in the past, which is tweaking what we do in the middle. But this all kind of goes around together. So actually, it's not like a linear thing like this. Actually, the reality, going back to what I touched on earlier, is really understanding what works creatively, how that fuels what you put into the algorithm, how the data that comes from that and that moves back round is quite critical. And so don't think of it as only linear and what do I do in creative and what do I do in data and what do I do in buying. It really is about how those things can work together and actually create learnings consistently. And going back to the A/B testing part, how you can A/B test within that. I've talked an enormous amount, so I'm going to stop now and play a video. I'll also take a breath because you probably want to hear it. This is from NBC in the US. I apologize, it's very, very American. But this gives an understanding of the way in which creative is evolving with generative AI. And this is why I think it's really an exciting field, because I think what you're going to see is the ability to do things as advertisers that we've not been able to do before, and to test and learn. So taking that personalization journey from the top of the audience, taking it through to understanding what you want to show them, and then understanding how that feeds into the platforms that you want to utilize. This, I think, will really be a massive game changer. If it works. Oh, no. Hang on. Otherwise, I'll explain it to you. 2 minutes? All right, I'll explain it while it's loading. So basically what this is a platform that's been developed in the US called Scale. The platform in the US allows you to create, what it allows you to do is to create video content and imagery all generated by generative AI that feeds into Facebook. So obviously Meta are already developing their own platform that allows generative AI, but this is a platform that just really nicely explains how it's done and what that means. So everything I was touching on earlier about what we do with personalization, about understanding those audience and creating those segments, one of the challenges has always been how do we make enough creative to suit all of those different audiences? And this will allow us to do it. What it allows us to do is not only create the creative, whether that's visual or video, or also, here we go.
The future of advertising is here, thanks to generative artificial intelligence.
Can you hear sound?
The models that are generated here are not real people. This is a fully AI-generated model.
Don't need to hire the model. You don't need to hire the cameraman.
That's what Scale AI offers marketing agencies and brands. Alex Wang, CEO of Scale AI, a startup valued at over $7 billion, says his tools blow up the bottleneck that slows down advertising teams by enabling them to use their clients' data sets to instantly customize ad images with generative AI to test what drives the highest return on ad investment.
You can just generate tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of different possible ads to then test. And you can use some of these ad platforms to immediately take, some of these generative AI ads, test them, and see what drives clicks, what drives a response from their audience.
Other startups, such as ChatGPT rival Jasper, offer AI software to accelerate ad content creation.
You can create eye-catching marketing and advertising copy in seconds.
And Meta says it's working on the ability for brands to use generative AI to create ads. For now, it offers AI tools to A/B test ads and quickly improve. And while Google has integrated AI into ad creation and targeting for years, it hasn't yet launched generative AI options.
So that finishes the section on personalization. I talk about innovation. So I just wanted to close off. So what you see there with generative creative is, if you think about what we went back to the beginning, start with the customer, really understand the audience, understand what you want to say to them, but then you can create so many different assets from that you can show them. And then if you take the A/B testing principles in, what you're then able to do is show a customer 100 different variants that allows you then to show them things that work. And in the same way that we did when I showed you the Meta ad earlier, and we changed all the different elements in that, you're then doing that with imagery as well. So you're allowing yourself to create multiple different possibilities for what you could show a customer and be able to really challenge and target them. So that was just a little bit on personalization. I hope that was interesting. I'm going to talk about innovation now. No one's asleep yet, so hopefully I'll continue on. All right, good. So I'm going to show a little bit more videos. So I thought I can't start a presentation on innovation without another quote. You'll see a theme to the way I write my presentations. The first quote is about innovation, is about the ability from Steve Jobs, the ability to see change as an opportunity, not a threat. The theme of my presentation in this innovation section is all about innovation as a culture. Innovation is not the activity you do, it's the culture you create that creates the ability for you to innovate within your organization. And I'm going to talk about it through the lens of what we do at Boots and also what we do, what I've done through my career. So hopefully this is going to work. This is otherwise I'm going to skip past it.
And if you look at, for example, the phone, the time it took before half of the population in the United States actually had one took more than 50 years. A century later, the first wireless phone was introduced, and that only took 16 years before half of the population owned one. And then a few years later, the first smartphone came. That only took 6 years. Now, what does this show us? This shows us that not only technology is developing itself in an exponential pace, it also shows us that the adoption time, the time it takes for you to adopt something new, is decreasing dramatically. Now, this has huge implications on us, on the society, but also on our whole business landscape. And it means organizations that want to stay relevant in the future really need to start innovating. Now, luckily, most of the CEOs in large organizations actually say, according to a study, that innovation is a key priority. However, saying so is not the same as doing so. It's all about execution. It's not about having a bright idea how to innovate. It's about what you do with it. Now, in the same study, they actually look at how successfully these organizations manage to innovate. And unfortunately, only a fifth of the same CEOs put innovation as a key strategic priority on their agenda.
So, really interesting guy. I met him actually. He's Dutch. He used to run PwC's innovation lab for them in the Netherlands, and really, really interesting guy. The part that's really interesting is the part he says at the beginning. All CEOs say innovation is a critical part of their business. Only 20% had it as a key target. So it's a translation from what we believe we should be doing into what we're actually doing that's really, really important. And I think innovation is about culture. Innovation is about a company culture. It's not just about an individual and what they do. So I want to talk a little bit about innovation as a mindset. I spent 6 great years at Booking.com. I was in Amsterdam. It's a great company. If you don't know anything about the company, it was started in a bedroom in 1995 by 3 Dutch guys. It's got an incredible history. If you want to read about it, it was sold in 2005 to Priceline for 300 million. And if you check the stock price today, you'll see they got a very, very good deal for the money they paid for it. But the core of the company has never changed. And when I went to work there, the key thing they started with is this is a company built on culture. This is a company that's built on innovation and experimentation. And that culture permeates through everything they do. Everything that they do is about that. So when I went to the head office the first day, there I was, Amsterdam, new guy, Englishman in Amsterdam. You go up the steps into the office, and there's doors in front of you that have logos on them. I don't know if they're there anymore. It's been a while since I've been there. But I'll show you, the reason I'm telling you this is because it really stands for the culture that they try to build. And the reason is these are the things that it says. This is the first. Experiment, learn, and be open to change. This is absolutely at the core of them as a business. They run 2,000 experiments on the website every day. When you join Booking.com as a developer, on your first day, you have to develop on the website. That's your job. The first day you get there, you go on the website and you develop, because it's expected that you will be able to drive experimentation. And the reason they've been so successful as a company is because they have experimentation at the heart. So when I went there to build the media team, it was around this kind of philosophy of experimentation. And so when I talk about why they consider behavioral to be the most important return for customers and understanding of their effect, it's because they believe in experimentation and they believe in change as a critical driver for their business. So, if you look at what happened during COVID, that company has evolved enormously over that course of period of time, but it's inbuilt in them. They do not fear change, they welcome it and they embrace it and they continue to drive experimentation. And it is this culture that's really important when we think about innovation. Second part, work together to achieve success, but always challenge each other to improve. This is a very... is there anyone in from the Netherlands here? Any Dutch? No? The Netherlands is an amazing country. My first meeting in the Netherlands, I met my counterpart, who was Dutch, and he said to me, "I don't agree with anything you say." It's like, bloody hell, this is quite intense. My first time we've ever met each other. But actually what it's about honesty. It's about authenticity. It's about being truthful to each other. And that's also a critical part of innovation, which is you do work together. You work together to create something that's different. Innovation is not easy, but you work together to do it, but you challenge each other in being able to do it, and it's a massive, again, tenet of their culture. And the last one, get things done today. I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. This is a really, really important part of innovation. It's something I believe in philosophy. Do not wait for tomorrow. Perfection is the absolute enemy of innovation. If you try and do things perfectly, if you try and do it exactly as it should be, you will not be successful. Their belief is do it quick, do it faster, beat the competition, velocity matters. So it's this philosophy that I really appealed to me, why I stay there, why I work there. But this kind of idea of innovation around experimentation, around challenge, and around doing it at speed, for me, these are the tenets of why innovation, what's so important in innovation. So you're thinking that's really wonderful, Ollie, but what does that mean for today? How do you use it in media? What does that even mean? So how I think about it for media and how I think about it is I apply the 80-15-5 rule. I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with this from an innovation perspective, but when I think about implementing it and how I've implemented it at Boots, we think about the future of spending 80% of our investment on things we know work. 80% goes on things I know are going to drive return for the business and are guaranteed to get return. 15% goes on the things that are going to grow in the future. That's the things that probably have worked, we've tested and learned on, but in reality isn't growing to full scale yet. And the 5% of my investment goes on things that haven't even been tried yet. Right? So we've tried everything. I mean, I've made my team try everything. The reason being is what fits in the 5 category probably will eventually, some will fit in the 15, and the likelihood is eventually the 15 will fit in the 80. And if you don't do anything and you only focus on the 80, you will get left behind. But that is the reality of a lot of companies. They'll focus on the 80 because it's the stuff that they know returns really, really well. And particularly in times like now, it's much easier to focus on the 80. But if you don't focus on the 15 and the 5, you don't grow the business, because that's where the future and the growth is. And going back to audiences, the new opportunities likely sit in the 15 and 5. They are the more risky. They are the things that might not work. They are the things that might not drive return. But they are the things that will get your business and drive it forward. So that's kind of the model that we use. What we then do is build this is not our roadmap, by the way. I couldn't put our roadmap on it. It was too bloody big. But it's just an example roadmap. What we then do is we take those 80, 15, 5, we split it down, and we kind of bake in the kind of roadmap around what do we want to do. So we look at it annually or quarterly. We have a look at what that looks like. What does it look like on an annual basis? What does it look like on quarterly? And then we build it into sprint cycles. So one of the things that I took from booking was about sprinting, about the agile process, about the development process, about taking time to really focus on a certain thing. Depending on your business and the cadence of it, it might be better to have a roadmap for innovation that lasts only a year, or it lasts a quarter, or it lasts 2 weeks. It depends on what you want to do and what you want to achieve, but having a cycle around that is really, really important. SummerSlam. Anyone like WWE? Man at the front. He knows what I mean. So when in the 1990s, when I was young, loved WWF. I was a young guy, loved it. So this has got nothing to do with it, by the way. Sorry, I was just completely randomly added that in there. So we ran a program called Innovation Slam at Boots, and that is to find the 15 and the 5. And what we do is we invite different people, different media owners, different companies to come in and pitch to us. We have committed spend against it, committed funding, and we put it to work. And if we can make it work and it fits with our business, we do it. But what this does is it creates a moment, it creates a space. So outside of the road mapping and the clarity about how we're going to drive those elements of our business forward, we also have a moment in time where we bring that really new, fresh thinking in, and we'll take anything. So, and this year's SummerSlam, we are running right now. We've just run, and it's now live in our campaign that we're running now. You'll be seeing it. We took some new ideas, things we've never done before, things in digital out of home, new formats, new companies we've not worked with, and we're running it right now. And after summer, we'll see what the results are. All right, so I've talked about AI, I've talked about retail media. I think I'm going to talk about the economy, and that will cover off all the bingo cards for this week. So look, it's a tough time, out there at the moment. And when you see headlines like this and you think about, as a marketer, what I should be doing, it's very easy to let innovation not be there and to focus on that 80 rather than the 15 and the 5. But the reality is, if you do that, you miss the opportunity. 2 years ago, TikTok was nowhere, was not something that people were using, brands were using. But as an advertiser that uses beauty as one of our core categories, if we hadn't started to really test into this category over 18 months ago and we hadn't done anything, we would be so far behind today. And the debate was very much internally, look, it's tough, we want to make sure that we want to deliver, but actually we want to make sure that actually if you don't test into it, this is now one of the fastest growing channels for us. But we could have not touched it because we already had very established models. So the danger sometimes when it's tough is to do the things that matter and the things that work and not to try the things that don't you haven't got results for. And actually not doing that is even big of a risk, because actually not doing that means you probably miss out on the opportunities. But you need to be able to measure it. So this is from one of my team sent me this. This is not about her life at work. This is just a gift about measurement. I think the key thing is, although you want to be able to do innovation, what you really want to be able to do is understand what you're trying to do. So what's the success metric? The success metric for doing the 5% might be just doing it. That could be the success metric. But it's aligning the business to that and really understanding that. And equally also, what are you trying to learn from this? What goes into the roadmap? What matters? And then finally, how does that fit into what you're doing for the roadmap? So I've got 3 slides left, actually. Really thinking about how you measure success and innovation also really matters. This is my last slide for a very quick video. One of the things that's really important for me is about velocity. And I talked about it when I talked about what we did at Booking. If you think about the number of tests you do, on average, if you do 10 tests, 1 will be successful. If you only do 5 tests, that means half a test will be successful. So the odds of you having success are very low. So what you need to focus on is the velocity. if you do it more and faster, if you did 100 tests, that means you've got a chance of 10 of them being successful. So thinking about how you can create velocity into that innovation pipeline of what you want to do is really, really important. All right, I've got one slide left to play a video, and then I think Tom's going to answer some questions. This is Simon Sinek. I like him. He's a very, very good guy, very funny. If you watch Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, you'll know Simon Sinek. Talks about lots of really, really interesting stuff. This is his take on innovation and its relationship between it and also culture. I'm just going to play this very quickly, and then hopefully it will play. Okay.
I hear this all the time, especially from CFOs. It makes me laugh every time. CFO, what's your priority? Efficiency and innovation. Good luck with that. Innovation is not efficient. Innovation is trial and error. Innovation is experimentation. Innovation is testing. Innovation is doing something that fails and fails and fails and sticking with it, because we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're not just going to walk away from this even though it failed the first 2 or 3 times. You know, Seinfeld was a disaster with terribly low ratings when it first came out, and thank goodness they weren't making the decisions based on the numbers. They were making the decision based on what they felt was good television. And when we believe in something desperately, then the worst thing we can do is cut people off who have intense passion for something. If somebody has unbelievable passion for something that they want to, that they think can help the firm or change the industry, change the profession, why would we stand in their way? Why would we say, I want you to do this? Then they're going to go into whatever we're telling them to do, like this, with malaise. When they have passion for something and they fall, they'll fix it because they have passion for it. Never ever restrain someone with passion. And just accept the fact that innovation, if you want to be, and by the way, you don't,
So I think the point that I want to make with Simon Sinek is it's trial, it's success, but the people that are in your organization that are driving this agenda, they are hugely passionate about what they do, and I will take someone who's got passion and will every single time. Innovation is not easy, and therefore it does require you to take the time over. But if you've got people that matter and that will go through it, and again, this goes back to the culture. If you create that culture, it allows it to happen. So last things to take away from me. I know I can't believe I've talked 45 minutes. One, personalization is a key driver for growth. Secondly, really think about customers and audiences versus tech. Artificial intelligence will evolve to consider personalization. Innovation is a mindset and a culture. And then finally, the world we work in is constantly changing, and innovation is not really an option. You have to do it. So that is it from me. Thank you very much for listening. And I think Tom might ask me some questions.
Thanks, Ollie. I only have 15 questions to get through in 5 minutes. But any questions from the audience first? Much more important than mine. Right. Okay. So, so sort of quick light question.
Yes.
How do you use ChatGPT in your personal life?
Oh, that's a good question. So I use it. I use it quite a lot, actually. I use it a lot for helping me. Sometimes when I want to write an email, and I can't think of the things I want to actually say, just put it in there, let it construct something, then I use it to work around it. So I use it. I think I use it a lot for stimulation. Also, like we've got an away day next week with my team, and I was thinking about icebreakers. So I was like, what icebreakers could I possibly run with my team next week?
What did it come up with?
Marshmallow Tower, which if you've never done it, it's phenomenal. If you haven't done it with the team, you should do it. It's the best thing. It's a phenomenal thing.
We've gone from very cerebral to very silly immediately. Sorry. So I really like the point around velocity of innovation. I was an innovation director at an agency, and trying to make innovation happen from the bottom up is very hard. So it's inspiring to see you as a leader in the business mandating innovation. But I remember when I was selling an innovation to my boss, I was saying, well, 1 in 10 things will work, and all the other things will cost exactly the same. And they couldn't handle that level of risk. So how do you sell in that level of financial pain to the C-suite?
Yes, great question. I think that's where the 80% comes in. So you've got to be sure that the focus on the things that you know will work and will drive return is there. So you know you're not going to damage the business, you're not going to hurt the business. And I think that's sometimes where we get it wrong. We probably put too much emphasis on the 5 and the 15 without the 80. The 80 gives you the balance to be able to, it almost gives you the right to do the 15 and the 5 because you know it will work, you know you can demonstrate return. And I think also they know that if they don't innovate, it will make a difference. But I think having that guaranteed return is a really big decider for them.
Any questions from you guys? Oh, over here.
Hi Ollie, I'm also from Nottingham, so hello.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic.
I just wanted to ask a question about personalisation.
Yeah, of course.
How much do you think that ties into personal and personality? Is it enough just to sort of personalise and provide kind of personal offers, or do we have to be a bit more human with the way that we talk to people, the way that we communicate, and put a bit more of our brand personality into it too? Do you think those things are...
Yeah, it's really critical. So I think... I was talking to someone earlier about it. Our brand purpose as a company is with you for life. For Boots, it's really, really at the core of who we are as a company. You know, we are, Boots, as I said, it's been around for 175 years, so it has an incredible equity as a brand. And so I think being able to distill that into the communication, I think, is really, really important. And I think being able to then target that with customers, I think, is really critical. So, ironically, I heard a talk yesterday. We were talking about audio and voices for local regions rather than a singular one for one. I think that's the sort of approach we have to take in the future, is really thinking about what's relevant for the customer and what matters for them. And again, testing it. Does it make better, like one voice versus, we have one, but actually if we had regional dialect, does that improve the performance of it? So definitely got to get that personality in for the brand, and then equally also, I think, testing around what else is possible, what really drives the performance.
Unfortunately, we've got to leave it there. All these chairs are getting moved out. Some weird MadFest stuff is going to be happening. But can we have a massive round of applause for Ollie Shayer?
Thank you, guys.